What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host Phil. I normally do a cute little intro that's fun and, entertaining, but we're just going to jump into it. So remember, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Threads at Buffalo Sports Collective and on X plus Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com and look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. I'm jumping ahead because I'm just sick and tired of already talking about this team. I'm going in here. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm just existing in the presence of the Buffalo Bills that what we thought they used to be. Monday Night Football game, we're recording on Tuesday night because we couldn't wait to talk about this game, Phil. They lost 24-22 in yet another perfect example of how the Buffalo Bills find unique and just utterly embarrassing ways to lose. This time, they left 12 players on the field and a last-second rushed field goal that they missed, and guess what? Flags, 12 men on the field, kick it again, you lose again. Phil, where do you want to start with this? I'm assuming the good because there's very little of it, and we can skip to the bad right after that.
Yeah, it sounds accurate. I mean, that is, I guess the good, in a weird way, is that the Bills do find fun, memorable ways to lose because it's something that we get to be known for. Year in and year out, we continue to find just bad.
Chicken wings, broken tables, devastating losses.
Pretty much, yeah. The good, there's not a lot of it. I mean, it's the thing. The reason I really didn't want to talk about this game, because it's the same thing we've been talking about for months now, where the defense balls out as much as they can with the injuries they have, and I don't even like using that really as an excuse anymore because we know what it is, but at the same time, they're playing really well given the situation that they have been put in, and it's not a good one. Missing 90% of your team doesn't really help, and then you got certain stars that look like a shell of themselves, like Von Miller, who goes out there, and I don't even know what he's doing on the field at this point. Coming off that last injury, he just does not look like himself and has yet to. Yet the defense finds a way to keep this offense in games, and they did it once again, looking pretty solid the entire game, doing the best they can. I mean, the Bills had the offense just really threw it in their face as much as possible, and we talked about it last time. Just at what point is the defense again they're not ever gonna give up, but at what point do you just become deflated as a defense going out there and stopping the other team's offense after, turnover after turnover, situation after situation? You go out there, you make a huge stop, you give the ball back to your defense or your offense, and the offense goes out there and gives it right back to the opposing offense, and you're right back on the field kind of going, what did we just give you the ball for? And that's kind of what it's been like for the last month or two or three, pretty much most of the season, other than a few games here and there. And I feel like the defense is just been very steady. I mean, they're giving up mid-20 points, which isn't great, but for the offense that they have on the other side on their team, should be able to put up more than they're allowing, and they are doing their absolute best to keep this team in the game. And the offense is pretty much just kind of spitting on them game in and game out and just not giving them much credit or a chance to really get a victory that I think the defense deserves, because, my goodness, do they deserve a victory after what they've had to go through the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, if you want my opinion on this team, go listen to our November 8th show. Go listen to our November 1st show. No, wait, keep going. 25th, 18th, so on and so forth. You know what I mean. Like, I'm going to try not to get upset because I don't think this team deserves any of my passion and any of my, level of care anymore. This defense, once again, balled out. For the last month and a half since they've been down 5 of their starters, and even their head coach, who I also have a problem with, has mentioned it. He's mentioned it specifically in the press conference after the game last night, because I was driving 45 minutes home from going to a friend's house and watching that game, spending my time watching that game, and guess what? Wasted my time watching that game. If I didn't do this podcast, it would have been turned off. Phil, 5 starters were out again. They balled out. I think McDermott tooted their horn by saying they're a very good offense on the other side. they're not that good of an offense. I mean, Russell Wilson's thrown for under 200 yards back to back to back to back. 5 straight games he's been under 200 yards passing. It's not a great offense, but the defense did what they needed to do. 4 turnovers. They allowed 6 points off those turnovers. The majority of the yardage, or majority of the drives that Denver started was at like the Bills 40. Or Denver 40, I apologize, 40 of the Denver Broncos. It's just they've had one, in my opinion, my little opinion, that who cares about my opinion? If you're listening, I guess you care about it. They only have one bad game, the defense, and it's the Patriots. One bad game out of 10 so far. Your offense is just stunk. The other positive, and then we can get into the negative. I'm trying not to get overly negative, and I'm trying not to show I care. It's very difficult because I'm very ticked off. Kincaid, he's a legit player. Besides that one bad drop that he had that ended one of the drives, his play should not be affected when Dawson Knox comes back. I know Sean McDermott's motto is you don't lose playing time to injury. I don't care. I don't subscribe to that rule. I think that's the dumbest rule possible. If you're the better player, you should be playing Dalton Kincaid is the better player by far. He is the second best option in the receiving game behind Stephon Diggs. He should be on the field 85 to 90% of the plays that Buffalo runs. He should not come off the field to get Dawson Knox on the field. We know what Dawson Knox is. He's a decent backup tight end. You're paying him starters money. I don't care. I didn't pay him that money. It's Dalton Kincaid's the starting tight end going forward, or I'm going to riot. So Phil, that's I guess a good transition into the bad, and I don't even know if we have enough time to go into all the bad.
There's a lot of it. The offense as a whole, just terrible. I mean, again, this is something we've talked about for months now, and it just does not change. I mean, even like you said, McDermott's philosophies on certain things, using timeouts, his game management has been brutal his entire career, and that continues, and something that he really has to work on and get fixed. But the offense in general, once again, I think the swings they do from game to game to try to fix things without fixing anything at all. I mean, you hyper target Stephon Diggs like you should, and then in this game you give him 5 targets like you shouldn't, especially in a game where it's close and you need to put up points and you aren't using your really good wide receiver. I understand he was getting blanket coverage the whole game from Surtain, and that's a really hard matchup, but Stephon Diggs beats most coverage when you give him the opportunity, and even still find plays and ways to develop things to get him the ball. He's your playmaker for a reason. Having a game where you lose by 2 points and Diggs leaves the game 3 for 34, that's not going to sit well with anyone. Having Gabe Davis, your most targeted player outside of Dalton Kincaid, I mean, Kincaid deserved it, like you just mentioned. He's pretty much your wide receiver 2 on this team. I know he's a tight end, so we don't like calling him a wide receiver. Whatever. Kelsey's the wide receiver 1 in Kansas City, so Kincaid can be the wide receiver 2 here. And I think he is. So getting him 6 targets, fine, but Diggs should leave every game with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 targets. Having him leave with 5 and just 3 receptions is kind of a joke. And then even, again, going back to McDermott's philosophies on things, James Cook finished with 12 carries for 109 yards. Even Murray, 9 for 68. He did fine, but you take Cook out for how long because he had a fumble? Like, I get maybe sitting him that series, maybe one more if you really want to punish the guy, but you need to win the game. All you're doing is hurting your team by pulling a player like that out. He's not a rookie anymore. He's not a player that's your, third wide receiver as a rookie on the team, where if he fumbles, you're like, okay, we have the luxury of taking him out of the game because we have, people in front of him. He's a rookie, and we will, let him think about that fumble. He's a big staple part of your offense. He's up there with Diggs. I mean, it's pretty much Diggs and Cook and now Kincaid as your playmakers, and you take him out for just series after series after series to punish him for fumbling a ball. Yet at the same time, like it's been mentioned a few different places, Gabe Davis lets a ball go right through his hands for an interception, and he's out there every single play still, and he never got punished. I mean, it's the exact same situation. So I don't know. That philosophy is kind of a joke to me, and when you're in a situation where you need to win games, you need your playmakers out there. I'm sure he understands that fumbling isn't good, and he shouldn't be doing it. I don't think we're at a point with him that he needs to be punished for a situation. The offense just looks terrible. Coaching looks rough. I don't know. This game was just so incredibly difficult to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I have written here the bad, everything else. Like, besides what I talked about where the defense was just balling out and Kincaid is a nice piece, literally everything else is horrible. And I understand they just fired Ken Dorsey when we're recording this probably like 7 hours ago. I get that. To me, he seems like he's the scapegoat right now because to me, he was like 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th on my blame for that loss meter yesterday or on Monday. I mean, the players just came out and stunk. The head coach just stunk. The special teams that they preach nonstop, we have to have quality players on special teams. We got to kick off some of these wide receivers and all these other players because we need to load up on your special teams. Special teams has stunk all year long. Your punter stinks. He's been terrible recently. Here's the thing. And again, I'm trying not to rant, Phil. I really am. They don't deserve my passion, but I have to. It's spewing out of me. From the top down, and it stops and starts with Sean McDermott. Whether you blame him or not, he is the leader of this team. Everything starts and stops with Sean McDermott. And ever since, and I know people hate me bringing this up, and everybody hates hearing about this. Ever since 13 seconds, and we have no idea what happened because it's buttoned up quiet there, he has taken zero accountability. If you can show me a time where he has taken any sort of responsibility for any of the shortcomings of this team, let me know, send it to me, and I'll own it, and I'll whatever. I'll admit I'm wrong here. 12 men on the field, Phil, is inexcusable. Like, that is the basics. How can you not count to 11? How was there not a single person on that sideline? They don't have a coach. They have 45 water people that spray water in people's mouths, but they don't have somebody that counts the players on the field. Are you kidding me? Like, how can you not count to 11 in the most important snap of the game? How do you not, like, for a coach that is praised so often, and it's become mind-numbing the amount of times that we hear he is so detail-oriented, how many times has he come up short because of the minor details in games? 13 seconds, the London game, Hail Murray, the Jaguars game last year, the multiple Bengals games, Aaron Rodgers game, Miami's Heat game last year, Mac Jones this year. The embarrassing losses are stacking up. And what's even more crazy is this man just signed a contract extension in the offseason. And I was on Talking Buffalo when it happened. And we were giving our opinions on what we thought about it. And I went, hey, he's done good so far. I think I'm okay with it right now. I just don't understand the timing of it. He still had years on his contract. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I was a little afraid that this team was going to get too complacent because of where they were the first 17 years of the drought. And then he got them out of it. And he seemed like the king and, could do no wrong. This team is 5-5, and they're 5-5 because the offensive side of the ball that has come up short time and time again. You have a unicorn as a quarterback who is struggling nonstop. He's broken. He doesn't know what to do. He looks completely lost out there. He looks worse than rookie Josh Allen. Why? Because he's not even running. Now, again, Dorsey is out the door. Joe Brady's in charge now. Maybe that's going to spark something in the offense. But to me, this firing came down to Dorsey being the scapegoat over not knowing how to correct anything. Because if Dorsey was truly the problem, Monday's game was not the game that should have gotten him fired. It should have been the game before that, or the game before that, or the game before that. But the players were at fault, and the head coach was at fault for this game on Monday night. It wasn't the coordinator. The coordinator doesn't have, James Cook fumble on the first play of the game. He doesn't have Josh Allen almost throw an interception on the second possession. He doesn't have Gabe Davis let a ball go perfectly through his hands and intercepted. He doesn't have Josh Allen the first snap trying to go down the field right before halftime to throw an wide open interception. He's not doing that. He's making the play calls. You might criticize the play calls, but the players on Monday night just weren't executing whatsoever. And I honestly think, did Dorsey deserve to be fired? Probably. Did he deserve to be fired because of what happened on Monday night? Heck no.
Yeah, and I think like you said, I think he's 100% the scapegoat. And like you just kind of mentioned, am I okay with it? Sure. I think to me, this kind of signals for the rest of the year. I don't know if McDermott's going to go anywhere at the end of the season, even if this team implodes the rest of the year. Like, yeah, exactly. Like you just said, I doubt it. But to me, this kind of signals if the offensive coordinator was the issue, you'll kind of find out now whether it's the talent on the field. I mean, is Allen actually broken? I mean, some of the plays he made were atrocious and just not him whatsoever. And again, just the lack of passion on the sidelines by the offense is so upsetting. And we say it every single week, and it just blows my mind that he can go over there, sit on the bench after a tough play or a tough series and just pout and not stand up. And just like, I just don't get it. I mean, we see all these other teams around the league that have a lot less talent than what the Bills have on offense simply because they don't have Allen, they don't have Diggs, yet they're putting up way more points than the Bills are, and they actually look like they're having fun doing it. And the Bills look, I don't know, like it's painful for them to even be on the field ever. Like they just are grinding out the rest of, like they act like they're already 3-13 and it's the last game of the year and their season's over and they just don't want to play anymore. And then the defense goes out there, is getting the crowd pumped, getting everybody amped up, trying their little hearts out, playing a good game, and the offense goes out there and just doesn't seem to really care all that much about what's going on the field. But with Dorsey gone, again, I think to me it signals like, is it going to be the offensive coordinator that can change things? Is it the talent on the field that's the issue, or is it McDermott that is truly the issue? I mean, his defenses are incredible, and what he's been able to put together with this defense, being the head coach and defense coordinator, has been really, really good. Again, we talk about how beat up they are. I mean, a lot of that goes into what McDermott's been able to do with this defense as well, but at the same time, it's an offensive league, and your defense can only get you so far, and the offense that they've been playing has been very defensive, and that seems to be a McDermott thing, not a Dorsey thing. So I don't know. I mean, maybe this firing also kind of signals a change for McDermott himself. I mean, him and Dorsey have been together for quite a long time. I'm sure he's not thrilled with the fact that he had to get rid of him. I don't think they dislike each other from anything we've really seen. So, I mean, maybe this is a wake-up call for himself that he needs to change his own philosophy on what the offense is and just gives Brady a little bit more freedom to do what he wants. And we'll see if this actually signals any kind of change. But I mean, this offense needs some kind of shakeup, and it's like you just mentioned. I mean, I think he's 100% a scapegoat. I don't know if Dorsey is really the true root of the problem for any of this, but the offense needs something. And if that's what it's going to take to make a difference and actually spark some kind of life in this team, I'll take it. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we will have to wait and see what happens. But not just overall, just not good. Just not good for a team that is, once again, was supposed to be, you know, Super Bowl favorites or at least dominate most of the season. I mean, you and I had them pegged for a couple losses here and there, coasting in the playoffs, and we'll have some fun on our way to fighting for the Super Bowl. And now you're sitting 5-5. Yes, the season's not even close to over, but you have a really hard schedule coming up. This team needs a lot of changes to get back at it, and it's just frustrating and more than anything depressing. I mean, we had a lot of fun these last few seasons being a really good team, and if this is it already, and that's all we had was a couple seasons, and it's over. I mean, if this doesn't get fixed the rest of the year and we stick with McDermott next year, I mean, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but it's a very big gray cloud over this team until this offense finds a way to put up 30, 40, 50 points and just absolutely demolish someone. But I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, you might be on the side of the season's not over, and I've been trying my best not to be one of those, you know, Monday morning quarterbacks, you know, the thing they call where they overreact nonstop. I've been trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. I've been on multiple, you know, Talking Buffaloes. I've been on here saying, hey, the division's still in play. Hey, playoffs are still in play. Hey, they can still fix this thing around. They're sitting at 5-5, 10th in the AFC, and their conference record is 2-5. Here's their schedule coming up because we went over it again. They play home versus the Jets. Jets' defense has just obliterated their offense, and their offense stinks even more now. Then they travel to Philly. Then they get a bye week. Oh, but then here's this 5-game stretch. Kansas City, Dallas, Chargers, New England, and Miami. there's a chance they don't win another game here, Phil. I mean, honestly,
It's very possible.
I've been saying since week 5, and they've made me look like a fool, that, hey, this offense can still turn it around. There's some pieces here. I still believe this is a playoff team. I said that after Jacksonville. I said that after the Giants. I said that after New England. I said that after Tampa Bay. I said that after Cincinnati. Denver, I'm done with it. Like, this team is cooked. They're not making the playoffs. I'm honestly not trying to overreact. I'm not trying to be that guy. Phil, I'm trying not to show the passion, but I said it last week, and I'll say it again. People that gave Stefan Diggs a hard time or called him for be traded or any of that other baloney need to issue him an official apology, just like I'm going to have to do for UPL down the road this season. You have to issue a formal apology to Stefan Diggs, because guess what? This guy was completely right. His issue was he felt the team was going in the wrong direction the past few years. Guess what? They are there now. Guess what? By the end of the season, if this continues, I don't know why he doesn't ask out. I don't know. I haven't looked at his contract situation for next year. I know it was impossible this year because of the cap casualty, but I don't know why he would want to stay here. Since 13 seconds, they've regressed nonstop. We even said it in the offseason and coming into this season that they need another wide receiver. They need another person on the offense to step up, because this offense that might have all those fancy statistics and all those analytics and all that kind of stuff that show that this offense was great, we were talking about it where, some of these games, it looked like a struggle last year. And yes, they were probably one of the top offenses in the league, but it didn't look right. Like, it just didn't, something didn't look right. And then coming into the season, you lose against the Jets. Something doesn't look right. It's looking like the Miami game this year was the outlier, not the exception to the rule. It's looking like Miami's game was just everything clicked perfectly right, like a starburst, and everything went perfectly for them. Because everything else, they've stunk. They've stunk against bad competition. They've stunk against good competition. And guess what? The teams that I've been saying are bad teams, Buffalo is behind them now. Like, Oakland has the same record, or might have a better record than them right now. I mean, the Houston Texans, who are a feel-good story, but they have no business being in the same ballpark as Buffalo. But guess what? They're ahead of you in the standings now. Pittsburgh, Cleveland are ahead of you in the standings right now, Phil. You are sitting at 5-5. There is no chance. Even if you go 7-0, there is a chance you don't make playoffs because your conference record stinks so bad. This team is a lost cause right now, and the firing of Ken Dorsey, which I do think could spark something, they have so many bad pieces right now, and your quarterback looks like a lost puppy dog. It's horrible right now, and it feels weird because this is the first time on this show, because we started, almost 3 years ago, and like 2.5 years ago, I should say. This is the first time Buffalo's just been bad. Like, there's no hope in my heart anymore. And it's a weird sensation being where I was with the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, a few things. One, my brother got me a shirt for my birthday that I'm currently wearing, and it's one of your favorite memes with the guy with the stick saying "do something," and it's poking at the Bills and the Sabres. The Bandits are not on there because they do know how to do something, but it's a good time to wear it, and they did do something with Dorsey, but like you said, I mean, this team just looked like a joke. I mean, the Raiders win 38-10, solid. Washington win 37-3, solid. Dolphins 48-20, solid. And then since then, Jaguars, Giants, Patriots, Buccaneers, Bengals, Broncos, all been just a joke, and this team is just looking atrocious. And the other big thing, I mean, there's two things. One, like you just mentioned, Stefan Diggs, he's not going anywhere for a while. There's just no way. His dead cap next year's $31 million. His cap hits $27 million, so he's going nowhere. He has a potential out in 2025.
Poor guy.
But even that, the dead cap in 2025, cap hit $27 million. Dead cap is still $22 million, so likely not going anywhere. Then in 2026, when he's 33 years old, his cap goes up to 28, but his dead is down to 13. Even that kind of hard to stomach, but the next 2 years, $31 million, $22 million for dead cap space. I don't see him really going anywhere anytime soon. Like you just mentioned, I do agree. Poor guy. And then I don't know. I actually lost my other point, so we can move on from there, I guess.
Yeah, the only
Oh wait, no, I do remember it.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
Last thing was the teams that we just mentioned. I mean, this defense has been a patchwork defense the last few weeks, but you've gone up against just, Jaguars, Giants, Patriots, Buccaneers, Bengals, fine. Great defensive game, good offense there. But then the Broncos, like you just mentioned, that schedule, not only does the team need to get it together, but you're finally going up against offenses, and this defense is not going to be able to keep up with them. I mean, the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Chargers, good luck to this injury-riddled defense that has been keeping this team together and in it as long as they can, but it's been against mediocre offenses. Outside the Bengals game, they played incredible in that game and deserved to win, but coming up with this gauntlet outside the Jets game of incredible top 10 deep offenses in the league, I feel bad for them, and good luck to them. If they can hang in any of those games, congratulations.
Yeah, I try to leave all these segments on a positive note, so here's my last positive. The Bills have one more late game, and that comes with the Chargers at 8 o'clock on Saturday the 23rd. So the following day is the 24th, so it's not like you have to go to work. So there's the positive for you. You got 4 straight 4:25 game or 4
You're right.
25 game.
Yep.
It's hurting my brain, Phil. I was up way too late driving home. I didn't get to bed until 12:30 and then had to wake up at 6. But besides the story, 4:25 games and 4 more in a row, and then the 8 o'clock game versus the Chargers. But no more late games. That's one of the disadvantages that I've been preaching nonstop of having primetime games,
Won't get
especially
it next
when
year.
your team stinks. Yeah, we hopefully one. The rest of them 1 o'clock games. But have fun versus the Jets on Sunday, because I'm gonna have to stomach through it, and then we're gonna have to record it on Monday, and I'm probably gonna be upset and depressed. And Phil, I'm looking around my office here trying to find a white flag, because not only do I want to wave it for the Buffalo Bills here, I want to wave it for Fantasy Blitz, because I'm stinking. This is terrible. I picked Jahan Dotson, and I think I was telling you before we started recording, I go on to like ESPN and I look at last week's rankings, and then I count, Debo. Oh, you picked Debo last week. 53rd ranked. He finished 44 or 14th. Well done, Phil. You did really good. And then I'm like, Jahan Dotson, okay, page 2. There's 50 on that page, and I'm scrolling down. I'm like, I'm in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Where the heck did I miss him? So I searched his name, and I'm like, Jahan Dotson. He goosed. He scored the same amount of points as both Justin Jefferson and me. That means he scored 0. He finished 105th, Phil. So I'm gonna just jump in here because maybe it'll change my luck. I never go first. Week 11 player, I'm going Tony Pollard. He's ranked 24th. He's facing Carolina. They give up a lot of runs to everybody in the running back room. Who cares? I stink. You don't start him. Don't start Tony Pollard because he's gonna stink.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy that I got back in there. I didn't know if I was I had Purdy in that game. I lost anyway because I can't win fantasy for anything. But I did it Purdy, and he did great. So I knew the team did well. I knew he had a rushing touchdown, but I didn't know if he did enough to get inside the top 20. So when I saw him at 14, I was honestly pleasantly surprised. Didn't think Samuel made it up that high, even though San Fran came out and did exactly what I thought they would do and just put a big hurting on the Jaguars. But this week, I'm going with a player that I have been after in our league and was not successful in getting, and who the league loved for a little bit there, and then he went on the IR. Devon Achane is coming back from the IR. The last time we saw him, he took 11 carries for 151 yards and a touchdown, plus 1 catch for 14 yards. He's going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. They're currently ranked 25th against the run. Mostert also struggling a little bit recently. So Achane, he went out with, I believe they said just a sprain, not a tear. So they said his return should be good. His window is activated. I believe he will be back, and I think he is healthy enough to go right back in. And if he gets even just 10 carries in a game, I mean, we can call that limited, but for him, as I just mentioned, 11 carries can go for 151 yards. He has that ability. I think Miami would like to kind of reintegrate him back into the offense and get some of that fire back. So them coming off the bye week, I think he will be back at it and have a good game.
Yeah, he could have 2 touches and end up with over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's how good he is. And guess who dropped them? Me. I dropped him week 2 because he wasn't doing anything, and I needed roster spots because I was 0-2, looking at 0-3, and had to do it. So moral of the story here, if you have Tony Pollard, bench him. If you have Devon Achane, start him.
I am starting him in guillotine. Got him weeks ago for a couple bucks because I had no money, and here we are, firing him up.
What's weird is I stink at Fantasy Blitz here, but last week I went 2-0 in my leagues and I survived in guillotine. So something's weird. Back to 500.
You just can't blitz. You're not a good blitz. Just like the Bills blitz. On
I'm a little guy. Can't get back by the big guys. So we'll move on to the Buffalo Sabres here. 3 games to go over. Tuesday versus Carolina. Yes, I know it was over a week ago, but suck it up, Buttercup. We are one show a week until December. They lost 3-2 in overtime. Tuck scored. Dahlin scored. UPL 24 of 27 saves. Shots were 27-21 in favor of Carolina. Friday, got back on the win train, 3-2 versus the Wild. Yoki, Skinner, and Peterka all scored. Levi started 33 of 35 saves. Shots were 35-25 in favor of the Wild. And then Saturday, fell back to earth. They lost 4-0 versus the Pens. UPL started in this one, 36 of 39 saves. Shots were 40-35 in favor of the Penguins. Phil, what's your overview look of a 1-1-1 week?
To me, the goaltending, I think, was the kind of the highlight throughout the entire thing, which is very encouraging for this team and also mildly concerning. I think goaltending is obviously under a microscope this season. You have 2 young players that you're looking at hoping to take steps forward, and I think this is a great series that they took that step forward. Levi was incredible against the Wild, really held them in that, and honestly probably stole the win for them there. UPL, I thought, played incredible in both of his games, Carolina and against the Pens. I mean, I know they lost 4-0 against the Penguins, but I don't really think that was on him. He made some incredible saves to keep them in it. And against Carolina, he was arguably the only reason to me. I mean, the Sabres came out really good in the beginning of that game and then just kind of faded the rest of the game. Carolina really took over, and UPL absolutely stole a point for them. I know it was just OT, but he played great. And honestly, when Carolina scored that goal in overtime, I felt so bad watching UPL skate off. He looked very upset and kind of depressed, and I thought, like, just watching how incredible he played in that game. I know Ronta played well. I think the team overall did play pretty well. Ronta had a lot of big saves for Carolina as well. So, I mean, I don't think the Sabres played terrible or anything, but I thought UPL stole a point for them against Carolina, and watching him lose that one in overtime, I felt a little bit heartbroken for him because I thought he deserved it. But overall, I think goaltending was the positive in all 3 games. Even a 4-0 loss looks bad, but I think UPL played really well. I think Levi played really well, and I think they have a really solid pair right now moving forward. I mean, if UPL keeps this up, like you just said, I think you and I were both wrong on him. I was kind of a fanboy of him early, faded a little bit this season with Levi coming in and just wasn't sure how he was going to perform, but he's been incredible recently so far. So he's been good, and then Levi, 33 or 35 against the Wild, also looked really good. But the glaring issue in all of this is if your goaltending is doing well, and we're talking about it this much, it means your offense is not doing as well as we would like it to. And, yeah, getting goosed like Johan Dotson against the Penguins, not good. The 3-2 Wild win, I think they played pretty well, had some big saves in that one as well. And then Ronta, again, stole some against Carolina, but still, the offense is definitely the biggest concern to me early on. A team that was top 5 in scoring last year is not looking like it this year.
Yeah, I'll talk about the scoring first, and then I'll hit back on the goaltenders. The scoring, the power play is the issue, and that's the reason that the Patrick Kane rumors are still floating around, because adding him could possibly help your power play. That's why the Yuri Kulik talk of him getting called up is possibly out there floating around, because their power play is just drained up. Their power play is a main reason, and they were good on the power play last year, and it's just disappeared. It's like all the power that the power play had got sucked down to the penalty kill, and now the penalty kill is great and the power play stinks. It's like, that's kind of what happened to me. If they can fix their power play, I'm not worried about their scoring. But I've said it multiple times now. You were counting on so many of your players who had career years last year to do the same thing or better this year for your goal scoring to do it, and younger players to step up and other players to step up. And it just hasn't happened yet. I mean, they're still floating around. I think going into Tuesday night game, which I know after one period they're down 3-0 versus Boston, whoopee. But I think they were like 1 point out of playoff spot, but they were like lower. So it's still very early on in the season. You just don't want to fall too far back. I think once you fix the power play, which I think is fixable, you'll feel better. You know, you're not going to get that help with Matt Savoy because he already got sent back to juniors, which I thought was really weird. I know he didn't play much in the Carolina game, I believe it was, or it was a Wild game, I believe, Wild, that he started. He only got like 3 minutes of ice time. I don't even know why you stressed him if you were going to do that. But he's back down to juniors with Sammy back. Skinner's goal was filthy. Paterka's breakout continues. But to go back to the goalkeeping, my apology letter to UPL is in the draft form right now. I've been typing it out recently, trying to get the words right, but it's there. You know, he's been playing very well, even though the numbers don't really back it up yet. It's still early on in the season. He's 3-3-1 with a 3.09 goal against and then a 903 save percentage. He's actually the only goalie on the team with over a 900 save percentage. And then Levi is 3-3, 3.17 goals against and an 896 save percentage. So while those numbers don't back it up, I do agree with you. They were playing very, very well. The only other thing I want to mention, I don't like the fourth line of the Buffalo Sabres. I think once Oposo gets his 1,000th game on Tuesday night, which they're going all out, I really think they do those type of ceremonies very well now, and it fills up the crowd. And that commemorative stick holder thing that they handed out for the first 10,000 fans for Oposo is really nice. But once he's there, he's cooked. Gergensen, he's not the same player. They need to fix that fourth line by putting like a Ruzic on the line, a Byro on the line, and pulling these veterans out. I know they won't, because they signed him back to be that leadership role, but you can be a leadership role in the locker room and not on the ice, because they do not fit this style of NHL hockey anymore. It stinks, and I hate calling them out, but because of all the work they've done to get the team back to where they were with respectability around the league and in the community, but I don't think they're NHL players anymore, and I think they're hurting the team based on the amount of minutes that Granato is playing them.
Yeah, I think, like you just meant, like Yost and Byro, like players like that, those are the players you want. Even like you said, Ruzic, those are the players you want.
Some sort of offense.
What was that?
Some sort of offense.
Right.
Zemgus and Kyle are not generating much offense whatsoever.
Right, and I know Krebs has been in and out throughout this whole season, but he's right there with them, sadly. I know he's younger, so hopefully he can kind of turn around, but he's been a shell of himself offensively as well. I know he's turned into a very big defensive forward, but his offensive flashes that we saw last year, I think, have also kind of disappeared. He's been in and out of it, but like you said, you see the excitement from Yost, from Byro, from Ruzic. Those are the players that you need to step up on the fourth line and really kind of take over and have the ability to put some kind of offense forward. And with this team struggling here and there to get offense going, I think they could really use a fourth line. And also, like you mentioned, I thought Savoy going down was strange as well. I'm not really sure. I don't know. I know they got a lot of injured players, so we'll see what this lineup looks like healthy. And again, Quinn's coming back at some point, hopefully. Not really banking on him anytime soon, but at some point he should be back. So we'll see. But I mean, how long can you hold out with the offense doing what it's doing right now? I just don't think the combinations in offense they currently have looks all that threatening to other teams. And even though, like you said, I mean, career years, yes, but even though we saw career years last year, I mean, the team just really isn't repeating it at all. I mean, they're taking quite a big step back. I mean, Thompson, Skinner, Tuck, all of the typical players still lead the team in points, but it doesn't look great. I think they're, middle of the pack, 5-on-5, and then, like you mentioned, their power play is terrible and one of the worst in the league, which is where a lot of your scoring goes. So I think they'd be, like you said, better if the power play was going, but even still, their 5-on-5 even strength is only middle of the league, whereas last year you were top 5, so that also isn't looking good. But as a huge positive to end this, I think Paterka's breakout, like you mentioned, he looks incredible this season. He is really taking what he did last year, which was solid flashes here and there, and making it very consistent this year. He's looked, I don't know, just really, really, really good. Most of the goals that he's scoring, even the plays that he's not scoring on where he's assisting, the Skinner goal, I forgot what game it was, that he was able to poke the puck out of the zone. And then I think it was the Minnesota game. He poked it out, and then Skinner went away on that breakaway. And even there was another one. I don't know. Oh, man, I don't know which game this was either. But when he fell down, it might have been against Carolina, where he fell down into the boards and then still was able to stick handle from his butt, get a pass off. And then the puck went
that was
in the middle,
the Carolina one where Tuck stole the puck.
Yeah, then Tuck stole and scored. I mean, to keep playing through getting just dumped on the ice while the other team is like happy that they threw you on the ice and you're still stick handling and throw it back to the front of the net, where then Tuck was able to, like you said, steal it and score. I mean, he's just can pretty much do no wrong right now, and he's playing incredible and has definitely been a huge highlight of this offense.
So on our next episode, we will talk about the Boston game, which, again, they're losing 3-0 as we speak, the Winnipeg game, and the Chicago game. Yeah, we will talk about all three of those games on the next show. We'll move on to our final segment here. We both went to the open practice. I thought it went very well. I thought they, for the first time in, 2 years, I think they had it? 1 year? I know they missed it last year. I can't remember if they had it the year before. Last year was due to the snow, but here's some things that I saw, and then I'll pass it off to you. Evan C., their fourth goalie, their rookie goalie, their second-round goalie that they picked, I don't think he's anywhere near ready yet. He is a mountain of a man. I think he needs to learn to play more of the Dylan Ward style, where he plays out further. Right now he's been too far. And again, this is one practice, the limited time I saw. This is just me, what I saw at that practice. This is not an overgeneralization. This is not him like as a career right now. This is just one practice. So take it with a grain of salt, take it as you will. But I just thought he played too far into his net with that type of size that he is. He needs to come out and cut off the angles because he's so big he's not quick enough to move around yet. So it's expected. I just don't think he's anywhere near ready. Some players that I noticed didn't get a full run of practice. Belter was off when they were doing the 3-on-2, 2-on-1s. He was hopping around. Cam Wires didn't look like he was practicing fully. Dylan Robinson didn't look like he was. I know Bud Bailey, who talked to Steve Dietrich and John Tavares, friend of the show, Bud Bailey, wrote the Buffalo Bills book, and I believe the Buffalo Braves book is out now, so go get those. Very good reads. I read the Buffalo Bills one, planning to read the Buffalo Braves one. Little, publicity and shout out to him, and go read the book. So there you go, free plug. But he also mentioned Justin Robinson was also one that wasn't fully ready to go, but he's been playing in both preseason games, so I'm assuming he's good to go. Brandon Robinson looked like he was full to go, but some of the things we learned were they're hoping to get Sweeting and Bomberry back at some point this year. It sounds like Ethan O'Connor chose Rochester over Buffalo. So those are some little tidbits that we heard and or noticed at the open practice. So Phil, I'll pass it off to you for what else you learned while you were there watching them practice and run up and down the field, which looked really tiring because I'm out of shape and old and, my knees are bad.
Yeah, the player I was watching the most simply because, kind of in spite of you, because I'm
going to leave here. I'm going to let you just talk here. I'm going to leave the room.
We have slightly differing opinions, and I do agree with your opinion about it, that basically there is no room for him on offense. But Christian Watts was a player I was keeping the closest eye on just to see what he was doing, and it really wasn't difficult to keep an eye on him. The man is huge. He's a big guy. I know Smith and Byrne are both taller players, but he's a physically big forward. And I think the most interesting thing with him is that he was running with Smith and the offensive ones for the entire little scrimmage they had where they're doing 5-on-5. Johnny would call a few, whistles to really set it up, but he was out there with, who was it? Buchanan, Smith, and I don't know who was on the left side at the time, but he was with
McCulley.
Yep,
and
that was one of them.
I don't know the other one. I can't remember the other one, but it was McCulley.
So, I mean, he was out there essentially with the ones, and Johnny seemed to be making it a point to make sure he was out there with Dane and Buchanan to kind of really set him up and see what he was doing. So I think he's going to get probably a really close extended look. I'm not 100% sure he's going to make the team, but he looked good in his chances. He definitely looks like a rookie for sure. I mean, there's chances where he looked a little lost at times on whether he should pick or whether he should shoot, but he definitely has confidence. He's a big guy, so I think he'll be an interesting One, to see if they hold on to him. He was the one who had the hat trick in the first preseason game. We didn't really see anything stats-wise. Weren't able to watch the game, but stats that we could see, we didn't really see anything in the preseason game 2, so we'll see what happens with him. But they definitely seem to like him quite a bit, so I'll be interested to see if he can push for a spot. But, I mean, there's certain players like him, Bloomberg I was keeping an eye on because he's transitioned, but then, like you said, Belter, Wires didn't really get the run we were expecting or hoping for. They seem a little bit tweaked as far as injuries go, but I think we were really interested to see how they were going to do, and then we didn't really get a good chance to see them. But the other couple of big things that were mentioned in the Q&A, Mark Stainhouse has accepted his jersey retirement, but they are working on when he can kind of show up and do the whole entire ceremony. I think they'll really make a big deal of it. I mean, Bandits fans have been waiting for it for a really, really long time, so I think they're going to try to make it just as great as they possibly can. So right now it seems like it's in kind of Stainhouse's court as far as when he can find time in his busy life. He's got a family. He lives in Canada, so it's kind of a whole thing to make the trip and everything, but they're trying to make it work. But he has accepted to retire his jersey at some point. We don't know when it's going to happen, but it seems like it's in the works, and it has kind of been in the works for a couple of years with COVID going on and everything. So no idea when it's going to go down, but it seems like at some point it's going to happen. And they also mentioned that he has not yet officially retired from the league, so that also is putting a little bit of a, time, I don't want to say crunch on it, but kind of a hang up in the situation. So hopefully at some point it will happen. It seems like the team and him have talked about it quite a bit. He has accepted it. So at some point, at some time, he will likely have his jersey retired. When? No idea. But, I mean, good just to see that we have some kind of information that it looks like it will happen at some point. And then the All-Star game was the other big thing that was mentioned, that it is unlikely to come back anytime soon. And if it does, it will be summer or fall, because the scheduling conflicts throughout the year with teams even just trying to get all of their home games in at their home arenas. It's not easy for the NLL, being a little bit of a smaller league. They don't really have priority over a lot of things. So taking a week off for the teams to have a all-star game, I mean, it's every single team has to take that week off. I know we have kind of random bye weeks, but having the entire league take a week off in the middle of the season just doesn't seem like it works for scheduling. So if it does come back at some point, it'll likely be a summer or fall thing. I was trying to think if I would prefer one or the other, and I think to me, I don't know, I feel like fall is what I would want, kind of like a preseason all-star game almost, where, you're like ramping things back up. My only issue with that was if people would care enough. I know NLL fans would care enough, but I don't know if it would really grow the game itself, because I feel like it's a tough time with football getting back into the swing of things, hockey getting back into the swing of things, and trying to like sneak an all-star game in before the season starts. I just don't know how much coverage it would get and compared to how much it deserves. So I don't know when they'll get back to that. But a few other just interesting things we learned from the open practice.
Yeah, two things. I would think it would have to be fall because so many of these guys play summer ball.
Also true.
And then second thing, Mark Stainhouse, he's up for the Hall of Fame when they had it before.
I also thought
they shut everything down. So I don't think officially having to retire has much to do with anything. It's just, what is he, the only active player that hasn't officially retired that's up for the Hall of Fame? I saw
Yes,
his name up there.
in history.
It's fun. But yeah, preseason game real quick. Again, we couldn't watch it because they don't allow anybody in to watch it, which is, I get it. I just wish they would find a way to stream it at least, because there's other teams around the league
not
that
just
do it.
Buffalo, but the NLL.
Yeah, I think Philly streamed it. I think New York streamed it. There's a few other teams.
Just stream
if we can do this these idiots can do it on YouTube. I know we're not live, but you could at least record it and then play it back later.
Take a phone, hold your phone up.
Right, we can do it.
Play.
Why can't you? You make money. You do this professionally. Why can't you do it? But preseason game Sunday, won't dive into too much, versus Rochester. 2-2 after 1. And again, these are all from Dave Buchanan, so thank you for him attending these games and putting these on Twitter so we at least have some information out there. 2-2 after 1, 6-4 at halftime. Rochester in the lead. Buffalo got the lead back after the third, 7-6, but they ended up losing 12-11. Again, preseason, not that big of a deal. Don't take much grain of any. I butchered that one. They don't have it. Don't take too much What am I looking for here, Phil?
Take it with a grain of salt is what you were trying to...
Take it with a grain of salt. It's not what I was aiming for, but that's what I'll settle with. The score doesn't really matter.
It's
Frazier
your high blood
had 3.
pressure that's getting to you.
I do, Phil. This was not a good episode to do all this in the game Monday night. It's a bad season for high blood pressure and trying to lower that so I don't have to go on medication. That was too much information for you all to know, but there you go. You're in on my life now. Frazier had 3. Justin Robinson had 2. Kluch, McCulley, Byrne, Dane, McKay, and Bucky all had 1. Orleman started the first full half. He allowed 6. Shanahan got the second half. He allowed 6. So right now in this game, it was 6-6. I think this is kind of expected after what we talked about last week where Shanahan got the first nod. I was expecting Orleman to get the second nod. I'm expecting in the third preseason game, which is in Six Nations, which is in Canada, on the 25th, which you can actually attend if you want to go to that game. I don't know if they look it all up. I didn't look far enough into it because it's far away and I haven't cared yet. So I still have too much on my mind. Again, too much information, don't really care. But I think it's going to come down to the third preseason game because I'm assuming, I think they did this last year, Matt Vince is going to get a little action. It'll be who relieves Matt Vince that I think has the final edge in that goaltender department because right now I still think it's neck and neck between the two. In practice, it seemed like neck and neck. I know Shanahan got a first couple nods, but Orleman got a couple first nods in practice as well. So it really seems like they're neck and neck. I think it's 50-50 who wins that battle there, but I really think the telling tale will be who relieves Matt Vince if he truly does play in that third preseason game.
Yeah, and to me, between those two, I think if it is truly 50-50, I think they just default to Shanahan, who's been here and part of the organization for a long time. It's nothing against Orleman, but if Orleman hasn't done anything, which I don't think you and I have really seen anything yet from what we can witness, to truly take over that position, I think if it is truly 50-50 as far as their talent goes and what they've shown, I think to me, the team would just default to the person who's been here for so long, knows Vince, knows the team, knows, just been part of the organization for a really long time. And yes, it's a little bit of a bummer for Orleman, who's an outsider in that situation. But if if Orleman truly hasn't done enough to show that he deserves to overtake for the backup position, I think they just go with the person that they have known and arguably more comfortable with in a way, because again, he's just been part of the organization for so long that I think, to me, if it's truly 50-50, that's who they would default to. And before we leave this information, also part of that interview with Bud Bailey, Dietrich was asked if there were any other contracts that still had to be worked out. And he said, no, for the first time in a while, that in the first week of camp, everyone is done. And that is interesting as far as Max Adler goes, it seems, based on that information. I mean, I don't think we want to officially confirm it because we don't have anything other than that information, but it seems like if they are done handing out contracts, that Max Adler will likely not be a part of this team this year.
Yeah, I know he reached out to Max Adler on Twitter. I've been trying to keep track if Max has answered him yet. He has not yet, so we'll keep track of that. He asked him if he's actually playing for Buffalo this year. It's gone unanswered, so we'll keep track of that one. But yeah, it would seem like either he's injured, either face-off men don't do a ton of work in training camp. So that would make sense that he doesn't have a deal yet, but it's a little bit alarming that Dietrich would just come out and say, hey, nobody else needs contracts. So I don't know if that just meant more like
for camp
long-term deals because
right.
They do still have his rights, but it's a bit of an interesting thing.
Officially closed on him yet, and we don't want to speculate that there's zero chance he comes back, but it's concerning in a weird way. And if they do start the season without him, move away from it, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the face-off dot. I mean, do they go back to their system of kind of not caring if they win it and kind of giving it up like they used to, or do they try to win at their best and just whatever happens, happens? It's going to be interesting as we get a little bit closer to the season to see if he does get a deal, does come back, kind of last-minute thing, like you said, might just not need to be in camp, or he's injured, or if he does not come back, what they actually will end up doing at the face-off dot. It's going to be interesting as we get a little bit closer, but it's coming up quick.
Yeah, I'll try to dig a little bit more into it before the next show to see if any of these newer players that they brought in have any face-off experience. But otherwise, it's probably Nick Weiss, it's probably Chase Frazier, it's probably Ian McKay,
like
all those guys that
patchwork.
have done it prior to Max Adler coming in. So I'll try to look that up and see if there's anybody that was brought in that does have face-off experience. But Phil, we're getting into our final segment of our final segment. We're going to be predicting the 8 playoff teams for the 23-24 NLL season last year. Just a rough estimate here because, they had divisions and conferences. Last year in this order were the top 8: Buffalo, San Diego, Toronto, Calgary, Halifax, Panther City, Rochester, and Colorado. So those would have been the order. Buffalo would have faced Colorado in the first round, San Diego, Rochester, Toronto, Panther City, and then Calgary, Halifax. All of those would have faced each other. For us, we're going to go top to bottom. Who is your number 1 team and your number 1 seed going into the playoffs in the NLL season in 23-24?
Yeah, I, with my bold predictions, kind of teased what I think my top 3 are.
But not the order.
Right. To me, the top 6 are going to be the top 6. Whether, whatever the order ends up being, I don't know. But I think, to me, the top 6 teams in the league are the top 6 teams. But I'm going to go back to a little hometown favorite, Buffalo Bandits, number 1 overall. Again, I mean, we've talked about it the entire offseason. They have had multiple championship runs here, and they just won a championship, and they are bringing back pretty much everybody that was part of that championship run, including the key players like Matt Vince, which is the biggest offseason, I was going to say acquisition, but re-signing. And I think with him back, this team has all the makings to do it again. We saw how incredibly dominant they were when they were finally healthy. So if this team can stay healthy with the team that they have, I think they have every ability to be number 1 overall again.
I'm assuming everybody out there is expecting me to have the Toronto Rock in first place, and you would be incorrect. That is not happening in this one. I do have Buffalo as the number 1 seed, and it's not that I have Buffalo and Toronto that far apart. I'll give you a spoiler.
Fair.
I have Toronto number 2. I think those are the clear-cut top 2 teams in the league right now. I don't have them super far apart, but when you're the champ, you get the respect. And until somebody beats you and knocks you down, you are still the champ. I have Buffalo as the number 1 seed. 4-4 last year. They were the number 1 seed in the entire league last year. 11.95 goals for. That should go up because hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, their team and their forwards are going to stay healthy this year. You saw what happened when they had their full onslaught. They just ran through the playoffs and obliterated everybody. I think the goals against should it either stay around where it was at 10.61 or actually go down because I think their defense is actually improved. Even with Sweeting and Bomberry out, I think some of these young guys are going to step up just because they're big body guys. I guess I'll transition to number 2. I don't think Toronto's that far apart. And I honestly don't because I think what they added on offense, even with Latrell Harris out, I think 13-5 last year. 13 goals for, 9.11 goals against. They were second in the East. Yes, they lost both games to Buffalo and they weren't even close. But you get Schreiber, Small, Craig, Matthews, and Bushi all on offense. You got Erlin in the faceoff dot. You got Cree and Desnu in the defensive zone. And then you got Nick Rose, who somehow wasn't a top 5 goalie, which, recount. I don't understand how you can have a top 5 goaltender count. And again, this is not kissing Toronto Rock's but they're just very good. Toronto Rock is a top 5, or Nick Rose is a top 5 goaltender. 13-5, 9.03 goals against, and an 87 save percentage. Those numbers were actually better than Matt Vince's. It's true. The facts are the facts, but that's my number 2 teams. I don't think that they're that far apart. Buffalo and Toronto are my number 1 and 2.
Yeah, Toronto is my number 2 as well, and I think the only, which we differ on, and even in my own, I guess, philosophy and mentality I differ on, where Vince faced a lot more shots than Nick Rose had to face, but at the same time, it kind of also pads the save percentage for Vince because he has more of an opportunity where he lets a goal in. He has more opportunities to save it to get that back up, whereas Nick Rose has less shots, so his save percentage being higher, I mean, equal, but has to be higher in order to kind of keep pace with that. But yeah, Nick Rose, I don't like him because he's good, and that's the reason I don't like him. But that team is stacked again. Like you said, they were really, really good last year. They had one of the best offenses in the entire league last year, continued to have one of the best defenses, added some big pieces in Matthews and Bushi. It's going to be another good team. It's going to be a great battle between those two. And I don't know if it was Dietrich or Tavares mentioned it at the open practice that they're really, I think it was Tavares. They mentioned, what does the unified standings mean to you? And the biggest thing to him was not playing Toronto and Rochester 3 times a year. And I think for Bandits fans, I know we have to play them twice, but even he was mentioning in playoffs, maybe not having to go through them every single year like we have had to the last 3 seasons, where Toronto, because you're both on the East and they're really good, those end up being the 2 teams in the Eastern Finals every single year. So this time with the unified standings, if Buffalo makes it that far, you might not have to go through Toronto. You might have to go through a former West team. So I think that's pretty exciting. It'll be nice. I know you still have to play them twice, which is a bummer, but I think it'll be nice not having to play them 3 times and possibly not having to see them at all in playoffs will be interesting. But to me, they are a number 2 team in the league. They're scary, they're good, and they can hang with the Bandits except in playoffs.
So those that listened to the show last week, we all know your number 3 team is Halifax. My question for you is, what's your number 4 team? Is it the same as my number 3?
It is. We just have those flip-flopped.
Okay, perfect. I'll talk about San Diego if you want to talk about Halifax. Sure. San Diego, I have number 3. They were number 1 in the West last year. They lost in the quarterfinals to Colorado in the 1-game playoff. 13.33 goals for, 10.72 goals against. I think they might improve in goaltender with Chris Orgolari. He's only 19 years old, but I'm pulling up the stats here because I completely forgot to add it. He went 4-2 with a 10.36 goals against and a 77% save percentage. He's replacing Chiliano, who was 10-2, but he was a 10.71 goals against and a 78% save percentage. So yes, you're handing the keys to this kingdom. Seals have the crown, get it? Ha ha ha. But I think he could step up. This is the new wave of young goaltenders coming in the league. You got Demood, you got Landon Kelch, you got Hartley, you got all these young guys that are coming up through the system. And I think with the defense in front of him, adding Trevor Baptiste, Danny Logan's the second year in there. And then the offense is just star power with Wes Berg, you got Doby, you got Dixon, you got Stotts. This offense can carry this team if the goaltender is not top notch. I think you're relying on the goalie to be as good as I think they're hoping to be. I think it's a little bit of like the Buffalo Sabres here. We're relying on a young goaltender to kind of carry them through the season. But 19 games, no back-to-backs. I think it's okay. I think this could be the number 3 seed. I think they are a tier below Buffalo and Toronto, but I think them and Halifax, they could finish 3-4 and then flip it back to Halifax ahead of them. I really could see one or the other, but Halifax, the only issue that I have with them, and then I'll pass it off to you, is, again, goaltending, and then they've come up short multiple times in the playoffs. I know San Diego has, but it's happened to Halifax more often than San Diego, in my opinion.
Yeah, Halifax and San Diego, to me, are the east and west of each other. And kind of like you just mentioned, I think they are both extremely similar. I think San Diego and Halifax both have goaltending issues, and I think they're both... Warren Hill got re-signed. His stats do not jump off the page at me. I'm not the biggest fan of him. I don't think he's a goalie that's going to hurt your team, but he needs to step up this year if this team's going to take the next step. That is absolutely their biggest issue, especially having one of the best defensive players in the entire league, and Hozak Bell is also a really good defensive player. And then they have my boy Jake Withers, who is...
I was going to say, you got Halifax third just because of the Withers effect.
Yeah, Jake Withers
just
is incredible, great at faceoffs, incredible transition player. The dude is just a beast, but their offense is also really, really good. They got the other Stotts, Randy Stotts. They got Peterson, Benesh, Jameson. Again, you look at these two teams... Between Halifax and San Diego, you have 238 goals for the Thunderbirds and 240 last year for San Diego. So offenses are extremely similar, but the big issue with Halifax has been their defense, and not really, to me, their defense, because their defense has some star power. Hozak and his, whatever his shoes are that aren't shoes, his little, footies or whatever.
Webs.
Yeah, whatever he wears, they're interesting, but I don't like him because, again, he's really good, and when he's not playing the Bandits, I do like him. He's a great defender, but I think they have the defense, they have the offense. To me, it's goaltending for both of these teams. If either one of them can step up, I think that team takes the next step, and I could easily see these two teams flip-flopped 3-4 or 4-3.
Yeah, I think we have the same 5-6 here as well. You got Colorado and Calgary.
I did flip them as well in my mind, but yeah.
Okay, so you got Calgary 5 and Colorado 6?
Yes.
Okay, I got Colorado 5, Calgary 6. So we just flip-flop those, but I guess we can kind of combine these two. Colorado, they were a slow start last year, and then they got hot in the playoffs. Dylan Ward kind of took off in the playoffs. He was not very good in the regular season, 11.19 goals against and a 78% save percentage. The thing that Colorado has going against them is they don't have Ryan Leaf the whole year, so their scoring and their offense is going to take a bit of a downturn. You saw what he was able to do in the playoffs, but they still got McLaughlin. They still got the Bandits, what was the killer of the Bandits, Zed Williams, and then Connor Robinson is there, Chris Wardle, he re-signed, but their defense is really, really good. Robert Hope, Tim Edwards, Jordan Gillies, Warren Jeffrey, who I think is underrated. I think he's going to be in contention for Defender of the Year next year. It's the biggest difference that I have with Colorado over Calgary is Colorado is returning a lot of their players while Calgary lost their head coach. And I think that's going to play a big factor in not their tumble down, but their step back of a season. Because I think these two are right on the edge of tier 2 into tier 3. I mean, when you still got Del Bianco in net, you got a chance to just crush everybody. I mean, the MVP and the goalie of the year. I just think that their offense is a tad below what Colorado's is, and I think Calgary, with this new unified standings, that travel is going to hurt them more than Colorado, because Colorado is more central located, while Calgary is more middle of nowhere, up north. So they're going to have to travel a lot further than Colorado will. So I think between the travel and the less, gung-ho starting forwards they have, I think that knocks them just below Colorado. But again, I can see these two flip-flopping as well.
Yeah, I think to me, the big thing with Calgary over Colorado is simply Del Bianco. I know Dylan Ward is really good, just signed a 5-year deal. I get it. He's really good. He came on strong in the second half. He had a pretty weak first half, so I don't think his stats that we see here, 11.19 and 78%,
Sure. Yep.
I don't really think they are an indication of how Ward ended up playing for the whole season. They just had a really rough start, but Del Bianco is pretty filthy of a goaltender, like you just said. Goaltender of the year, MVP, his stats speak for themselves. His transition ability, his assists for this team speak for themselves. I mean, I think, to me, he's just the edge between these two teams. I know, again, Dylan Ward's very good, but Del Bianco, to me, is better. And I'm a huge fan of goalies in general, and goalies kind of making the difference for a team. They also have Zach Currier, who I love in transition, but I do agree with you. Their offense, while solid, doesn't really have a ton of star power that jumps off to you. Jesse King, really good. Tyler Pace, really good. Tanner Cook, and definitely not average. That would be a little bit cruel to him, but he's not an elite player, but he's a very solid supporting player. So overall, I think Calgary doesn't have the star power that Colorado does, but I think Del Bianco can, like you said, steal and win pretty much any game for you when he's on. So to me, Del Bianco over Dylan Ward is what kind of has those two flip-flop, but I can see Colorado right back there as well. And Ryan Lee, I am just so it's sad. It really is. I know we don't like Colorado, and there's a huge rivalry there. I get it, but Lee is an incredible lacrosse player. He's had a lot of injury issues recently. When he has been out there, he's been right up there with Dane Smith. A few years ago when they were battling it out for top player of the year, and then he's had a lot of injury issues. So it's just a bummer for the sport of lacrosse to lose a player like that. Again, I know he's on Colorado. We don't really like them, but Lee's always been a really good sport, really good player, and it's just a really tough break for him to have to go through an injury once again after just coming back from an injury. So unfortunate to lose him for the NLL, but I do think these two teams can kind of flip-flop either way.
So, again, we don't know each other's lists, but there are 2 spots left. I think we went over the clear and obvious top 6, like you mentioned. I think there's 6 teams that are, not locked into playoffs, but they're locked in with pencil. I mean, that's as close as you can get to locking in before the season even starts. There's injuries, there's slumps, there's stuff that'll happen. One of those teams might miss the playoffs, but going into it, I think everybody around the country would have those 6 teams as the top clear 6 teams. I think it's these next 2 teams. And doing this, I was like, of course, I know the top 8 teams. This isn't going to be that difficult. And then sitting down trying to do this, I'm like, there's some teams here that are not going to make the playoffs that I could see making the playoffs. And that's what this is so difficult about. I guess I'll just jump in. My 7th team right now, and I actually bumped them down after doing a little bit more number crunching and looking at this. I got Panther City at the 7th seed. They were 10-8 last year, 11.33 goals for, 10.72 goals against. 3rd seed in the West, lost in the quarters to Calgary, who they ended up going and losing to Colorado. But I have them drop down because I can't see them getting into the top 6 because I do agree Nick DeMood is a very good goaltender. I think he might have gotten robbed because Aaron Bold, it's no shot at him, but he's 38 years old. He has no business being in the top 5 of goaltenders. There was DeMood, there was Higgins, there was Nick Rose. There were so many players out there that could have been a top 5 goaltender, and I don't know what the coaches and the GMs are doing that think Aaron Bold is a top 5 goaltender in the league. It's mind-blowing.
It's his last time to ever get that acknowledgement.
It could be.
So
it honestly could be.
Throw it to him.
The thing that I think puts Panther City as a 7 seed is because I think Jonathan Donville can take that next step. I think he did it last year, and I think there's another step there. I think Kellen Crawford playing a full 18 in his home city of Texas down there in Panther City, I think he can step up because he only played in 10 games last year. I think Matt Hossack, I think he's going to take a step up. Will Malcolm, I think, can take another step as well. It's just there's so many pieces that have to take that next step or work out that would put Panther City in the top 6 where you're counting on and banking on another really good season. You know, in their first season, it was that feel good. You were rooting for them to get that wild card spot, and they just came up just short. Last year, it was that season, you know, that fairy tale season where they finally got into it. Can they take that next step and jump and get out of the quarters and into the semis? And I just don't see it right now. I see them being into the playoffs in the 7th seed, but beyond that, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I have them as my 7th seed as well for all the.
We're looking good.
Yeah, all the reasons you mentioned. I mean, to me, they're essentially, you know, your young and fun team. They have a lot of young players, a lot of really impressive young talent. They're up and coming. They had a really solid second half of the season last year. I think they're starting to make a name for themselves, and I think what they were able to do in every way, shape, and form last year, like you said, the younger players, Malcolm Donville's taking that next step up. Crawford only played in 10 games last year, so getting him a full season. And then DeMood, if he can take that next step, I mean, he already looks really solid as a young goalie. If he can take another step forward, I think this team can truly be the 7th seed, and I think they have a really good shot at it. I mean, a lot of these teams, like you mentioned, are going to be fighting for these last couple spots here. I think your top 6 is just as locked in as it really could be. I mean, teams can definitely take a jump. Like you said, there's injuries, things can happen, but to me, it seems like those top 6 are just a tier ahead of all the other teams. But teams like Panther City can, if they can take those steps and everybody can kind of collectively take that next step up, they can possibly push for that. But I think they are just in a really good, solid spot to make a playoff run this year and at least make playoffs and see where it goes from there. And I think they are a good 7 seed team.
So, Phil, who is your 8th seed and the final seed in a final team making the playoffs in the 23-24 season for the NLL?
Yeah, this one was pretty much my bold prediction that
there it is.
I had. So after seeing what you have as your 8th, I definitely agree that you could absolutely get it as well. But I will start with mine. It is the New York Riptide. They ended up finishing last year not very good at 5-13. However, I did look it up. They had 4 games that they lost by 2 goals or less last season, and those were to teams named San Diego, Halifax, Buffalo, and Rochester. All really good teams. They made some good offseason moves. You and I both agreed that they have arguably the best offseason of all the teams as far as what they were able to do. They traded for both of us like this player that they were able to trade for, Kyle Matisse. We really wanted him for the Bandits. Didn't get him. It's all right. Their roster is maxed out anyway. But they were able to pick up a few other players as well. Giles Harris, Mitch Wild, LaFontaine, all solid. And then they have some draft picks coming in. The 33rd overall in 2022, Matt Anderson, Zach Deacon, 8th overall in 2022, and then Colton Lidstone, 2022, 21st overall. So they have a lot of young talent to go with Jeff Teat, who's already there and absolutely incredible. So if they can get a little bit better goaltending from Dunkerley, he only played in 9 games last year as him and Orleman were kind of battling it out, and Dunkerley ended up taking it over. He ended with an 1169 goals against average and a 77% save percentage, which is not great, but the defense on that team also was not very good, so they brought in some players to be better on defense. So if Dunkerley, who's only 24 years old, gets a true nod to be the starting goalie this year and can kind of take that next step, I think they can sneak into playoffs. You had it 2 years ago that they were going to make the jump. They did not. I think they made a much bigger push this offseason to make that jump. And I think they have the makings of being able to do it. Again, it's similar to a lot of the teams in this kind of range where they need to have, collectively as a team, they need to step up. I mean, all their players across the board pretty much need to step up, except Teat. He's already pretty much at the max. He doesn't need to step up. He can if he wants to, but he doesn't need to step up. He's already incredible. But if they can get him any kind of supporting cast, which I think they have done, and they can kind of grow as a team, I think they can be a team to sneak into that 8th spot and kind of push for a playoff run.
I will not be fooled again, so I do not have them making it. I have a team that started last year 0-7, and then they went on to go 8-3 down the stretch. Yeah, that's Georgia. They finished 8-10 last year, 12.17 goals for, 11.5 goals against. Yes, they did miss playoffs. The main reason that I have them making it is, well, there's two. There's Lyle Thompson. I don't think you can keep him out of the playoffs again. He had 106 points last year. Andrew Q, who came over from Albany, had 106 in 16 games. Shane Jackson was 93-point season. Jordan McIntosh, who I really wanted for Buffalo, finished with 26 caused turnovers. The other main piece, Brett Dobson, signed a 4-year extension, 8-7, 10.69 goals against, 78 save percentage. Again, apparently not a top 5 goalie, but Aaron Bold is. I'm taking a lot of shots here, Phil. I don't care. But I really think Georgia has the firepower on offense and the goaltending who, he just won a PLL championship, making a last-second save. So he has that winning pedigree now, carrying it over to his sophomore season in the NLL. There are some players that might figure out Dobson and some of his weaknesses, but I think he's that type of player, and I know you wanted him for Buffalo in that draft. He's that type of player that can adjust to those adjustments. You always want to be that player that, hey, when players adjust to you, like to Hokananiko, he might have had a bit of a step back in his sophomore season, but I think he's one of those players that adjusts to other players' adjustments and just gets better. And I think that's Brett Dobson in that. So I think he could be, come next year, I could see him being one of those top 5 goaltenders in the league. I think he could be that good. But with Georgia making it for me and New York making it for you, that means Rochester, one of the only team that made it last year, we do not have making it. We don't have the Saskatchewan Rush making it. We do not have the Philadelphia Wings making it. We do not have the talk of the town, the Vancouver Warriors making it. And we definitely don't have Vegas and Albany, who I think are still rebuilding it, making it. So those are the teams that we have missing it. Those are the top 8 we have making it. So we're going to have it on our social media accounts. Our producer, Pat, is making the graphic as we speak right now. Phil, what are your thoughts on the playoffs and what it's going to look like? Because next week, on next week's Wednesday show, we're going to do the playoff run-through and figure out who will be the NLL champion.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I don't want to. No spoilers. Jeez, easy over there. But I don't know. I really feel like the top 6 is just still the top 6. It's
juggernaut.
I don't want to say it's boring, but these teams are elite for a reason. They have built it from the ground up. Buffalo was not great a few years ago, and now they've really kept that team together and have built a true, I don't want to say dynasty because I don't think we're there yet, but 3 straight championship appearances, 1 win that they just got, obviously. But, them, Toronto, San Diego, Halifax, Colorado, Calgary, those are the big teams for sure that I think everybody's going to have to get through. You have some teams, Calgary and Halifax, I think are going to be super hungry this year as far as trying to make it to the finals because they continue to lose and not make it there. Calgary won a few years ago, obviously. They're not too far removed from their own championship, but Halifax, San Diego continue to lose over and over in the quarters, and I think they are going to be itching to finally make it to a finals. And with this unified standings, I think it's going to be really interesting to see again, I mean, Buffalo and Toronto have faced off so many times, but San Diego has faced off with other West teams, Halifax with Toronto most of the time. So it'll be interesting to see some of these teams that get an opportunity possibly in playoffs to play someone other than the team they've seen the last few years and have been sometimes bounced by the last few years. So I think the unified standings are going to be a lot of fun, and I do think the top 6 are pretty locked in. I'm not going to, like you said, we don't have to pen it in, but I think we can pencil in the top 6, and I'm pretty confident those are going to be the teams, barring any crazy injuries.
Yeah, so we went long again. That's kind of what this November is probably going to be as we gear up for the NLL season next week.
So much to talk about.
We got the Bills. There's a lot to talk about, especially when you're trying to figure out the playoffs, seeding and all that kind of fun stuff. So we expect it to go long, but I don't think we expect it to go this long. But that's what you get for the month of November. Enjoy before we're back to 2 shows a week, and we can kind of space all this out. But next week we got the Jets versus Bills. Hopefully it's good news. We got 3 Sabres games to talk about, week 12 of the Fantasy Blitz segment. Me and Phil are still alive in our Guillotine League, so hopefully we both have our heads on the next show. And then stay tuned for the NLL as we run through the 8 playoff teams that we predicted. 7 of them are the same for us, with a couple adjustments in the seeds, and then our 8th seed is a bit different. But next Wednesday, we're going to run through it and crown our 23-24 NLL champion. Will it be a repeat, or will we have a new champion? So stay tuned and get excited for that. Remember, on December 4th, we're back to 2 times a week where we're going to review the NLL first weekend, and then December 8th, we're going to preview the first Buffalo Bandits game. So stay tuned. We got a lot more action coming, 2 more Wednesday shows before we're back to Monday, Friday. So thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Follow along with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X plus Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at Buffalo Sports. I am butchering this, Phil. There's been talking too much. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. Finally, until next time, bye-bye.